Hi, Brenton Ford here. Welcome to the Effortless Swimming YouTube channel. This is Feedback Friday. On today's episode, we're looking at someone's technique. They're a triathlete. I'm going to go through a full analysis here. So hopefully this helps you understand the way I like to analyze a stroke and a few ways that I'd look at getting better, improving his technique, and becoming a faster swimmer. So the first thing we normally look at is body position. And with the body position, we want to see the three touch points at the surface, which are your head, your hips, and your heels. We want those three touch points to be at the surface. If they're there, then there's a good chance that you've got a nice horizontal body position. You can see at the moment how this swimmer is just dropping a little bit through the hips and the legs. And the reason we want to try and avoid that is it's just extra drag on top of his legs, as you can see there. So one of the first things, or the most important thing to do in swimming, is reduce drag, because it's multiplied so much in the water that the first thing, the most important thing we really want to do is reduce drag. And a number of things can cause the hips and the legs to drop. Often it can be with the breathing, sometimes it can be over rotation or just simply balance. So we'll have a look through that and then make some recommendations. So you can see there, body position, just sitting a little bit low. If we can start to bring that up, it will help a lot. He'll feel a lot different. And if he's got a wetsuit on, obviously that's going to be fixed. But if you can get the right body position without the aid of a wetsuit or a pool buoy, it is going to help you in your swimming, even if you are racing open water. Now, the other thing we look at is head position. And there's a range that I normally look to keep within, which is anywhere from around straight down to about 45 degrees in front. Anywhere in that sort of range is fine. The main thing I like to see is quite a long neck. So if the chin's too far forwards and we've got all these sort of wrinkles in the back of the neck, normally that means that their posture isn't as good as it could be, and it can be affecting the rest of their stroke. So you can see here, it might be within the right range. I'd probably want to play around with or experiment looking a little further down and possibly just extending the back of the neck a little bit more. You can see the top part of his head's out of the water, which is good. That's what we want to see. But one thing that I would experiment with is looking a little bit further down. So how would we experiment with that to find the ideal position? Well, normally I'll get swimmers to go, let's say 100 meters. The first 50, I'll get them to look far forwards, look down, go in between. So that first 50, just experiment. Notice any changes through your hips, through your legs. See if a change in head position impacts these two things here. And then on the second 50, just settle into a position that you feel will suit you well and that feels best for you. So that's how I'd normally experiment with head position. So that might be the first thing that we'd look at possibly adjusting. But it's different for everyone, so there's no one ideal head position. Now the next thing we normally look at is the kick. So you can see here with the kick, occasionally the legs do splay a little bit wide. So right here, you can see probably just kicking a little bit wide here. Now, most of the time, if the legs are kicking too far apart, it's from what's happening out the front here. So if you over-rotate through the shoulders or through the hips, or you have a big crossover, that will often cause the legs to splay out quite wide. So I don't normally focus on this too much. We just want to focus on getting this part out in front right. So we'll look at that a little bit later on. With the actual kick itself, ideally, we want to see the heels breaking the surface every couple of kicks. You can see occasionally that the back of the heel does come out, but just sitting a little bit low there. Now, we could sort of look at ankle flexibility. That's something that does take a long time. And for a lot of triathletes, we don't focus on it too much. I normally just try and keep the legs up a little bit higher, sometimes by engaging your glutes and your hammies a little bit more to bring the leg up slightly straighter. And what I like to try and get to, or what I like to see, is for most of the kick to get the leg or the thigh above the line of the hip. Now, it's not going to always be there. Obviously, you still need to kick down. But if the leg or the line of the leg is sitting below that line of the hip for the majority of the kick, then it normally means that the glutes and the hammies aren't being engaged enough. And that's something that we'd want to look at. So, like anything in swimming, you want to be able to engage this to the point where it's switched on, but relax from there. If it's too tense and you're very rigid and too tight through there, you're going to be wasting your effort and energy. So it's that fine balance like we see with a lot of things in swimming. Then after that, we'll look at the entry. So what we want to see with the entry is fingertips going first, all right, which is good. We want to see the fingertips going first, then reaching and extending out in front. All right, this is looking pretty good. And a pretty nice setup position right here. So I normally like to see the fingertips below the wrist below the elbow, and have the fingertips just a little bit deeper than the armpit, which you can see there. So that part of the stroke, the entry of the extension, that looks really good. You can see just from this front half, all right, what we're looking at here, that's a pretty nice setup. Then as we keep going through, you can see here as he begins the catch, you'll start to notice the elbow somewhat drops, not too much, but it is sitting just a little bit low. And the main thing I'm looking at here is the angle of the forearm. So if we look at that forearm, you can see which direction that's facing, primarily down. Now, if we want to move forwards, we've got to apply pressure and force back in that direction. So you can just see with the forearm, at least through that early part of the stroke, it's primarily pressing down on the water. So we want to be able to adjust that. So sometimes it can just be caused by pulling through with the elbow too early or allowing it to drop. In this case, to me, and I'll show you from the front view, it actually looks like the shoulder is going down a little bit too deep, most likely causing him to over-rotate through the shoulders, and he's probably coming underneath his body a little bit too much. So it's going to be really hard for him to maintain a somewhat high elbow position. Now, with this high elbow position that we sort of always look at, you don't need to go for an extreme position like an Olympic catch level position. We do, however, want to keep the elbow somewhat forward. So the way I kind of look at that is if we draw a line from the shoulder all the way through to the hand, we want to see this elbow above this straight line. To me, that's an elbow that's being kept forwards or in a high elbow position. Anything below that, it's dropped. If it's in line with that line, then that's okay too, but ideally somewhere above the line here. It doesn't need to be extreme. Most adults don't have the mobility through the shoulders to be able to hold that sort of position or maintain it, or the strength. So we just want to have it somewhat being kept forwards. It doesn't need to be extreme. So looking at that, okay, we can see that with the catch, not setting up as well as we'd like to. From this position here, as he comes underneath the shoulder, not too bad. We do want to see the shoulder, the elbow, and the hand pretty much line up when you come under the body there. A friend of mine, Annie Jones, she calls that one happy family. You want to keep that in pretty much a straight line. We're pretty close to that, which is good, but I think that the hand's just underneath the body, which we'll see from the front view. Now with the right hand, nice entry, fingertips first. You can see on this right one, so when he finishes this reach and extension phase, just see what happens to his legs there. Just a little bit too much over rotation, which is causing the legs to splay here. And you can see nice position with the fingers below the wrist and so on. The fingertips, pretty good, might be going just a little bit deep early on, but the thing that stands out the most to me is this shoulder is below the line of his head. Normally, for most swimmers that I work with, I want to get them keeping this shoulder up near the side of their face a little bit more. As soon as that drops down, it's very hard to engage your lats to pull through. It means the shoulder's almost kind of out of the socket a little bit. It's in this weaker posture that doesn't allow much strength in the stroke. So what we're probably going to look at from this front view is less rotation through the shoulders, keeping this shoulder up near the side of the face. Then we can see with this right arm, similar thing, that elbow's just dropped a little bit, the angle of the forearm and the hand pressing primarily down over time, and this is the hardest thing to work on, this takes the most time, but over time we want to start to keep this elbow somewhat forwards. So even if he gets to that position in, let's say 6 months' time, you can see how much better that press back will be. Now sometimes it will take less, it will take longer for different people, everyone's different, but for most people, if they focus on improving this, that's normally where they can find the most improvement. Everyone's different, but for most people, that's what I've found. They can always improve their catch and pull position. Now, it does require you to have the correct amount of rotation and to be able to keep the shoulder somewhat near the side of the face or the cheek and not drop it down. So sometimes if we just try and work on that straight away and we don't fix this, then you're not going to get where you want to get to, because it's almost physically impossible to get this really good position if we don't fix this rotation. All right, so let's just keep going through here, just have a look at the back of the stroke. So you can see there with this left hand, it just comes under the body a little bit too much here, and it sort of drifts out, and you can see how this back part of the stroke is quite short. So from here, what we want to see is the palm actually facing back behind him. You can see it's turned into the hip there. All right, so that's turned into the hip, which just means there's nothing that's really pressing back that way to give him propulsion. And right here, the hand just kind of gets drawn out a little bit early. So we'd want to see a bit more tricep extension out the back, the forearm, the hand pressing back just a little bit more to give him this last little bit of reach and extension and glide out the front. Now, like you will have seen in one of our other Feedback Friday videos, that we don't want to push back so far and throw our balance off, but we want to find the right amount of tricep extension or press out the back. Now, let's just fast forward to the front view here. Now, from this front view, there's a couple of things I like to look for. Now, we've already seen from the side that he's probably over-rotating through the shoulders. And what I would normally do if I had this shot looking pretty much at the same height as him, I'd look at the shoulder rotation at its furthest point. It's a little bit hard to see, so it's probably not going to be that accurate. But we'll just see if we can get a rough idea. So he's around 43 degrees, possibly a little bit more, just depending on the on this angle here. So normally I'd like to see the shoulders rotated anywhere from around 32 degrees up to at most about 45 degrees. Any more than that, it's normally going to cause a bit of over rotation. Again, each person's different, but that's usually the range that I like to be within. And you can just see here on the entry point, it enters in line with his shoulder, which is good. And right there, the hand is in line with his head. So hand, head, right in line. So he's just crossed the center here. This shoulder, which you can sort of see, has just gone a little bit too deep. We want to try and close that gap up. So he should be around there. Close that gap up. And you can see as he goes through this part of the stroke, once he's underneath the shoulder, this is the position where we really get a good idea of how someone's swimming or how they're catching the water. Here we'll typically measure the angle of the arm. Now you can see he's at 138 degrees here, which is just, it's too much of an angle. All right, so he's too straight, he's too deep with his arm. But the thing that stands out to me the most is where the actual arm is. Now, the power position in freestyle is a little bit like a diamond. So if we did that on both sides, that sort of diamond position with both arms, that's where you're going to be engaging your lats, you're going to be able to stabilize your shoulders, and that's where you're going to find a lot of power. It's like a half diamond position or a triangle on the side. And the elbow needs to be pointing to the side, so it's got to be out here, and the fingertips pointing somewhat down. Now, you can see here the other thing as well is with his shoulders. All right, we've got that line. Oops, let's just go again. We've got that line with his shoulders. The upper arm is here, and then the forearm is there. So you can see how that's three different lines. Now, one thing that I picked up from Gary Hurring, who was a former Olympic coach for New Zealand and a former Olympic swimmer, I coached with him on our Hawaii camp, which we're running again next year in 2019. One of the things that he mentioned was we want to see two lines here once you're underneath the shoulder. So the shoulders and the upper arm is one straight line. The forearm and hand is another line. That's where you can really apply power, and that's what you'll typically see with elite swimmers, is you've got two lines instead of the three different lines, like you can see here. All right, so what would we recommend here? Well, we'd want to come out a little bit wider, so get that elbow out and get the fingers here. And again, one of the first things we'll do is just close up the gap through there. So there's a drill inside the Effortless Swim membership, which is called shoulder to cheek scoop, and it's where you'll actually hold a paddle in between your shoulder and your cheek. You'll hold a paddle here, and you're going to do a little bit of a skull with this arm. So just repeating a skull. And that's a really good drill that I got from Miguel Lopez in Thailand, where we run our Hell Week camp. I got that drill from him, and that's a great one just to set the shoulder up in the right position. So that's the right arm. And you can see, again, that's just where it comes a little bit too far underneath the body. it's across the center of the body. Then with the left one, let's have a look here. And this is where he gets the breath. Now, this is where most of the over-rotation is coming from, is on the breathing stroke. You can see here, if this is actually measuring correctly, he's rotated to about 70 degrees. Remember, we want that around 32 to a maximum of 45, so he's just over-rotated. That shoulder's gone down really deep, and you can see here where that arm is. Again, it's across the center, and we've got those 3 separate lines. So similar recommendation on this side, it would be to rotate less. So don't over-rotate when you're getting the breath there. We want to try and keep the shoulders in one straight line, somewhere like that, and have the arm there. And we want this arm to be in an angle of 100 to 120 degrees. All right, so the actual angle that he's at is 144. All right, so for him, just to recap, less rotation through the shoulders, keep the shoulder up near the side of the face, and that should help get him pulling through a little bit wider out there, and setting up the catch. I'd also give him a few other drills, just our sort of 3-step drill progression for developing the catch, which has been working really well. So I'd also give him that just to continue to work on, but it all starts from getting this stuff right first. So that's the key thing that I'd take out of this video here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Feedback Friday. If you'd like to get coached by me, have video analysis done on a regular basis, make sure you check out our Effortless Swimming membership, which is at effortlessswimming.com/membership. That's where I coach people from all over the world on their technique and their swimming to help them become better triathletes, open water swimmers, and pool swimmers. So check that out at effortlessswimming.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.